Alright guys, I gotta give another shout out to my buddy Miguel Marshall here. He found out recently that I haven't watched Peacemaker, and he told me I had to watch it, I wouldn't regret it. I just finished watching episode 8, the season finale, and he wasn't wrong. I really liked it. I'm not gonna lie. I really did. I really liked it. I think there is so much the show does great, and I think what makes it really interesting is it's the fact that we're not dealing with an A or B class character here. You know, I usually rank characters in worlds like this from A to F, not so much so in the form of rating how good their character is. I mean rating them in the sense of how often they're used. And let's be honest here, Peacemaker is an F-class character. He's a character that has not been used in generations, and they found a way to make him feel, at the very least, a B or a C class character. James Gunn did such a great job at making his character relevant. Now, before we dive deep into the actual show, I do want to give a shout out to James Gunn and specifically comment on the fact that I feel like this is his niche, that he should continue to work on projects like this. When Marvel announced that he was coming around and he was going to be making a Guardians of the Galaxy film, of course, Marvel is in their height of power, so Marvel is capable of releasing anything they want, and people are going to watch it. Now, as far as I can remember, Guardians of the Galaxy were a C or D class type of group in Marvel. Not many people knew about them, but now they feel like an A tier. They feel like a group of characters that everyone loves, everyone wants to know about. Guys, they just made a video game about them. A video game I really liked. A video game I liked so much I made a video about it on my channel, and I don't often make Marvel content. James Gunn comes over to DC, makes a Suicide Squad film with a bunch of characters no one gives a shit about. Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Polka Dot Man, King Shark, Ratcatcher. The only character in that movie that people really cared about is Harley Quinn, because Harley Quinn is an A-class character. All those other characters I mentioned, they're all like F tier, maybe D, and yet James Gunn still makes them feel relevant and uplifted to a B, or C. And I have to give him some serious props for that, because I don't really know how many other people out there could take a character like Peacemaker and make him as interesting as he did in this show. Now, of course, in this show, we do have the returning members in Agent Amelia Harcourt and John Economos from the Suicide Squad film, along with Peacemaker himself, Vigilante, Myrn, and Leota, who happens to be the daughter of Amanda Waller. All of these people together making one squad, even though it may be quite dysfunctional throughout the entire show, it fits and gels very well. Every single character in 8 episodes is humanized. Every single person has their own personal issues they're going through as the show progresses. And what's amazing about the show in writing form is that every single character's personal issues are dealt with and somewhat resolved by the end of the show. Everyone had a fair amount of screen time or involvement in the show where you could understand their issues, you could understand the certain things they go through, and not only could you understand them, maybe you could somewhat relate to them, but it also felt satisfying when those issues came to a close, or when those characters found a way to move on or move forward from their issues they were facing from before. You felt empathetic and good for them. It is so easy to watch the Suicide Squad film and watch John Cena's Peacemaker and just think, okay, he's this really big, dumb brute who believes in his own twisted sense of justice and peace, and he just goes around killing people. It's really easy to think of him and see him that way. It's not until you watch the show where you realize how much of a broken character he is. And often in screenwriting and storytelling, it is the broken characters you tend to relate with, or I don't even want to say relate, but you connect with them the most, because the number one driving force for the general public when it comes to drawing the attention of an audience towards your main character is a character undergoing issues, a character who is broken. Empathy and pity is one of the strongest emotions you can have for a main character, and that is how they wrote Peacemaker. I mean, Peacemaker's father is a skinhead. He's racist and disgusting in every single way possible. It's because of him that Peacemaker killed his brother when he was a kid. It's because of him he was grown up to be a killer. It's because of his father he has all of these issues, and it really humanizes Peacemaker and it makes you fall in love with the character. And it's to the point where throughout all of these 8 episodes, all you want for him is to succeed. You know he's had a rough go at it in his life. You know he's done things that he wishes he could take back. You know he's done things that he never truly wanted to do. But the writing made it so easy for us as a viewer to want the world to just simply forgive him and let him move on with his life, which it kind of seems like he's capable of doing at the end of the show. But we all know that season 2 is coming and there's going to be a brand new story. I'll say as well that the action is fantastic in this show. Something I'm really glad they actually did is they didn't make Peacemaker, even though he is the main character and you do want to see him win, they didn't make him like an unstoppable force. Like, he can be beaten, and he clearly is not the best hand-to-hand combat fighter. I mean, in episode 1, he is getting absolutely obliterated by that butterfly he just happened to have sex with. And he was getting beaten so badly that the end result literally came up to him jumping out of a window, landing in the parking lot at such a high distance. Could have killed himself, to be honest with you. And if it wasn't for his helmet, he could have died. He might have lost that fight. In episode 3, when they finally get to the contract to kill the family, Judo Master happens to be there, another character that hasn't been used in generations. This 5'1" dude literally beats the shit out of Peacemaker, Vigilante, Harcourt, and Leota. I'm glad they kept to the strengths of his character and didn't just use the idea of Peacemaker being a main character as the reason why he can beat anyone, because there are quite a lot of times in the show where he gets beaten. But to continue that thought of action, like I said, the show is filled with great moments of action pieces and fight sequences. In episode 5, when they raid that factory area, it's where they fought the gorilla and John literally took the chainsaw and just stabbed it right through his chest and killed him. Like, those were some crazy intense scenes. The part where Peacemaker, Vigilante, and John have to fight Peacemaker's father, the White Dragon, there are parts of that episode and that fight scene that is really, really good as well. And the final episode is fantastic when it comes to action. This is something I did want to mention. This is not a dig at Marvel at all. This is just simply stating a fact between differences of the two studios. Marvel would never dare to make one of their projects R-rated because they've already defined their culture as being accepting of all ages. Whether you are 6 or 12 or 28 or 84 years old, you can all hop in and watch a Marvel movie, laugh, cry, and have a good time. Whereas with DC, you can't show this to a 10-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, maybe even a 14-year-old. I don't know how you want to be running your household, but you can't really be doing that stuff. I mean, guys, the last episode had Vigilante walking around cutting off heads and arms and legs and stabbing a guy through the head. You literally see the knife through the head. Peacemaker shooting people in the face and chunks of their face flying off while butterflies crawl out of it. This is what I'm talking about. Like, this is why I like DC so much, and I'm not saying that I need every single DC project to feel this way. I'm not saying it needs to be blood and gore and R-rated 24/7, but what I am saying is it's nice to know that we can still get superhero content outside of shows like The Boys, where it can be this gruesome and a little more adult instead of just having to resort to watching something like Marvel. Now, to talk about the villains a little bit, you got two. You got Peacemaker's father, Augie Smith, who is the White Dragon, and you also have the Butterflies. Now, when I look at both of these villains side by side, they are very different in so many ways that you can't even really compare them. But when it comes to villains you'd rather pay attention to, I'm not saying I prefer the White Dragon over the Butterflies, but what I am saying is I feel like with the White Dragon, we were a little more conscious and aware of his purpose, whereas with the Butterflies, the lack of information we got is what didn't really make me interested. I basically just felt as if, okay, they're aliens who enter the brain of a human, take over them, and we gotta stop them from basically destroying the entire human race. DC tends to make very good villains, and good villains in the sense where you don't forget them. You usually hate them, or you usually remember the actor's performance of the character because of how good they did. DC is very well known for their villains. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Robert Patrick's performance of the White Dragon is going to be one to remember for the ages. I'm not going to say it's one of the best performances I've ever seen, even though he was fantastic in the role. What I will say is that you hate him. And it's that simple. You can't stand this character. First of all, no one should like the type of person he is, but what you appreciate from his character is how much you despise him. There's nothing more that all of us can get on board with when we hate a villain. That just makes you want the hero to win even more. Ever since the first episode of the show, all you wanted was for Peacemaker to wake up, realize his father was a dirtbag, and to put an end to his scum. Now, of course, even though the White Dragon is dead, we do see in the final episode that Peacemaker is starting to hallucinate his presence. And when the show ends, the final scene is of Peacemaker, Goth, the Butterfly, Eagly, and his father all sitting on the porch in front of his trailer home, and then the screen goes to black, which I'm pretty sure that is to indicate for the second season that some of the trials and tribulations Peacemaker is going to go through is the inner talkings and hallucinations of his father, and that's going to get into his head, and maybe that will ruin some decision making and some thought processing, and it's going to be a really interesting dynamic for the second season. Now, I also think the show did a really good job at mentioning what has come before this, especially when it comes to acknowledging what happened in the Suicide Squad film. Also, too, I think they did a great job at mentioning other existing characters. I mean, there's mentions of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman. There's even mentions of Green Arrow, and we haven't seen the Green Arrow in the DCEU. But now we know he exists in this universe. One of the gripes I do have, of course, and I know it's not really that important, I think it's simply just because of how near, dear, and close that the Justice League really is to me. Yeah, of course, we get Ezra Miller as the Flash, which who even knows if he's going to maintain that job, and then you get Jason Momoa as Aquaman, which we actually get to see them, but then you see Superman and Wonder Woman, and of course they're shadowed out because it's not Henry Cavill or Gal Gadot, and they even had a stunt double for Ben Affleck's Batman, but for whatever reason, he was not not present in the scene, and apparently they did shoot a scene where he was in it and they didn't use that one. Not exactly sure what the issue is there, don't really know why they did it, but I think what it is I just really loved the fact that we had a solidified Justice League team, and then the next time you see them, it's in an HBO Max special series, and you truly don't even see them. You see 2 members of the 6 members of the Justice League, and the other 2 members that were there were shadowed out and you can't even see them. It just kind of hurt. It wasn't a cool scene for me anymore. It almost was a sad scene because I know what the Justice League could have been and what it should be, and it's just not it. Maybe I'm the only one who feels this way, but it's how I felt. Now, a couple of negative points I will mention about the show, and they're not huge, they're just a couple of things I noticed. Number one, I think the humor in the show is really good and it's really enjoyable. It also suits the world of DC. Everyone's always talking about, DC fans thinks everything needs to be serious and darker tone. Yeah, darker tone is usually the attributes you would attune with DC. That doesn't mean there can't be comedy. When you look at Peacemaker, it is like a perfectly rounded show of dark and R-rated with comedy. It's just darker versions of comedy, but yet it's still really funny and they do it really well. Although I will say I just think there are a couple of moments throughout the show where the comedy is stretched out a little bit, or there are times where the jokes don't land, I think, the way James Gunn and the writing team wanted it to. And then, it is what it is. You guys know me by now on this channel. I prefer it to be much more serious. I do like that a lot more. I don't shy away from comedy, though, when it is placed properly. Overall, the show did it really well. I just think there are certain areas where it wasn't executed the best, and I think for the next season, they can kind of revise the comedy aspect, and now they can be capable of knowing where they should and shouldn't place it. Another thing I'll give a little bit of criticism on is I hate complaining about this one because sometimes this one can feel so cliche and obvious, but I'm gonna say it because I noticed it. I did notice that some of the CGI in the show was a little sloppy in certain episodes. Some episodes it was like flawless, but then other episodes it was kind of like eh. And like I said, I noticed quite a few CGI mishaps throughout the whole show, but the one episode I think it suffered from the most was episode 7 when Peacemaker was fighting his father. I think a lot of the CGI for the White Dragon was really bad and it did not look the prettiest. Did it take away from the story? No. Did it really take away from the overall feeling I got from the show? No. Although it is just simply something I noticed, and it once again is something that it can get better on in the second season. And then the third criticism I would have as of right now is simply the butterflies and the Myrn character. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind Myrn at all, although I do wish we got a little bit more explanation on his desertion of his butterfly race. This is why I wish, and it's not just Peacemaker that suffers from this issue, it's pretty much any streaming service original that comes out on Netflix, HBO, Disney, whatever it is. I don't understand why all of a sudden these companies have gotten so greedy and think to themselves, you know what? We don't need to do 10 episodes anymore. Let's just make 8 episodes or 6 episodes or 4 episodes. I wish Peacemaker had 2 extra episodes. I don't feel like the show would have dragged on at all. I feel like 10 episodes of 45, 50, 55 minutes is a really solid runtime, and I just wish that it had an extra 2 episodes to explain some of these other things and to maybe go into a little bit more lore of the butterflies or the Peacemaker world in general. All right, well, now I'm going to get into the review of the show, and if any of you have seen the reviews on my channel, you do know that I like to go on IMDb, and I like to look at user ratings, Metascore ratings, and then I give my rating. Usually on IMDb, they don't give any Metascore critics, so I am just going to look at the user review, and then I'm going to give my review. So for the IMDb user review rating, Peacemaker is sitting at an 8.4 out of 10 with 88,000 reviews. And now, as for my review of Peacemaker, I am going to give it an 8 out of 10. And on my scale of rating, 8 means great, and that is what I do think of the show. I think the show is great. I think it captures everything you would pretty much want from an R-rated superhero TV show. I think every single character in the show is handled very well. I think the relationships between all of them is handled really well. The action sequences are great. I think the story overall, even with some of its issues, is a ton of fun. Once again, I will say the biggest thing that this show succeeds in is taking a bottom tier character and revitalizing him to a top tier or near top tier character. James Gunn has made Peacemaker relevant, and he's made Peacemaker a lot more interesting for a lot more people. But anyways, everyone, that is my review for Peacemaker. I am very happy that I did decide to watch the show because I had a ton of fun watching through it. Now it is your turn to let me know in the comments below if you have seen Peacemaker, which I'm sure a lot of you have by now. Let me know what you thought about the show personally, whether you liked it, if you didn't like it, what your rating out of 10 for the show would be. And if anyone else is interested, I will put a description below and a tag at the end of the video for my playlist of reviews. But anyways, everyone, that is it for this video. And until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.